We're back at Fabco in Lincoln with Adam here, who's been putting together my Austin Allegro Street Sleeper project with a Civic Type R Turbo. If you've never seen this car before and you don't know the backstory, I suggest you rewind and watch all the other parts, because this is part 11, in which you're going to see a big update on the braking system, finally, for the car. We're also going to see the finished cooling system here for the water and the oil, and the car now has a functioning gearbox and gear shifter. It's all exciting. I'm Jonny Smith. You're watching The Late Brake Show. The theme of this particular episode is predominantly about plumbing, isn't it?
Yep. Not with copper pipes, but there's been rubber pipes.
There's been a lot of plumbing going on in the engine bay over the last few weeks or so, and cooling. We're about to put extra cooling in there that we've been waiting for. So fans, electric fans, there's one on the floor back there with the brackets to go on the back of the rad. But I'll let you take up the reins now, Adam, because obviously you've been breathing over this for the last month or so.
Yep, so we've now got the oil cooler mounted, which is obviously pretty crucial because we've taken away the stock Honda water-cooled oil cooler to have like an extra front-mounted one, which is, you know, for cars that can do track driving, turboed.
Yep.
Will help us keep control of the oil temperatures a bit better.
Yeah.
So we've been working on getting all that plumbed in. We're still missing some of the fittings, but we're getting there. We know what we're going to do with that at least.
Yep.
We've now got all of the radiator hoses in, and crucially, the water pump is now mounted as well, which allows us to plan all of the other coolant lines that we need for everything else.
So that's that there,
yeah.
Right? The electric water pump.
Yeah, bolted onto the chassis leg.
Yeah.
And that allows us then to think about all the other coolant lines. So the coolant lines for the turbo and the coolant lines for the heater matrix that goes inside the car.
So this thin pipe.
Yeah, so all these smaller ones, they're for the turbo.
Yeah.
That's to keep the turbo temperature controlled.
Yeah.
And then the bigger ones, which go to the back, that's for the heater matrix inside the car.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's been quite difficult working out where all those lines are going to go, because the turbo is essentially right where those lines need to be, and you know, generally you want to keep those kinds of things away from the hot parts.
Turbo.
Yeah, the hot parts. Yeah, it's been a challenge, but we got it laid out pretty neatly. I think it's about as good as we could have got it.
I think it looks really clean. When I first turned up this morning, I thought, yeah, that's looking nice and clean. And I'm still amazed at what you've managed to fit here.
We've still got a bit of trimming to do, I think, to get it to go, but yeah it's...
But just to remind people that there's no bodywork changes to the car. So although Adam did chop off in an earlier episode, from about here forwards, the entire car
literally
was missing.
Yeah.
And has rebuilt it from the wiper panel forwards. It's still the standard track Allegro, which is obviously a compromise for steering, which we can talk about in a bit, because we're going to look at brakes today as well. And of course, no bonnet bulges.
No.
Standard front grille, standard front valance.
Everything fits in the stock Allegro engine bay and wing kind of area. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. It's looking good. I've
made your life harder by keeping it standard track width, making sure there's no flared arches, making sure there's no bonnet bulges and louvers.
Well, I think the Allegro engine bay is actually pretty small. Especially by the time you get like a full-size radiator and intercooler in.
Yeah.
Without the intercooler, we would have had quite a bit more room. But then you would have no turbo either.
Whose idea was it to turbo?
I don't think it was one person's idea. Exactly. I gave you a couple of options. We didn't have to turbo it.
No, I know.
Yeah.
You knew I was an easy target.
Well, I think I remember you saying you'd never owned a turbo car.
I've never owned a functioning turbo car.
Yeah.
I bought a Nissan S12 Silvia once when they were 600
Have you never had like a turbo diesel or anything?
Oh, actually, well, strictly speaking, it was our family car, so it was sort of more my wife's at the time. A Chrysler 300C diesel.
Okay.
That is the only turbo.
Yeah, so you need a turbo in your life.
I've never had a turbo.
Do it on this car.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the reason why we went for the turbo. Slight tangent, but
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting it all in there. We've got fans to go in as well now. It's getting a bit compact, but they're going to go. So
we've got a pair of these. I need to say at the top of this video, there's an incredible amount of components from T7 Design down in Exeter. Adam at T7 is a bit of a genius when it comes to designing custom parts. You'll know this billet intake plenum here is a T7 part. Loads of the fittings are T7. The water pump's T7. The heater matrix is T7. Yep. Mm-hmm. There's a spark
oil cooler.
The oil cooler's T7. and this reason why I'm holding this up is because T7 is a Spal fan dealer. Spal fans, really, really reliable, pretty slim. And we're going to be fitting a pair on the back of the standard sized Civic Type R Rad, and T7 make a custom bracket which you can order and buy, and these bolt straight on.
And hopefully you don't need to chop it up like I've done.
Yeah. So we have got to modify it because it's in an Allegro, not a Civic R, and it's mostly because of that part there, right?
Yeah, so mainly because of where the clutch slave cylinder is. It's slightly offset from the centre of the radiator, and there's not really a whole lot of room for like the depth of a fan. So I think we're probably going to have to do some slight fan trimming and some slight clutch slave cylinder bracket trimming.
You'll be shaving that bracket.
Yeah, it will be. Well, we might end up having to shave it so much that we then need to reinforce it.
But we'll try not to.
Yeah. It's just going to be just one of them of like keep shaving away at it until it fits, basically. But the biggest problem is still that you've got to anticipate that obviously when things get hot and the engine moves around, that's when you get a bit more movement in stuff and stuff begins to rub. So you have to kind of plan for that.
But what's good is in the earlier days of this project, we were always worried that this car was going to run really hot because of a lack of cooling. And in the early days, when it wasn't even this engine, we were going to have cooling in the rear. But we have settled on what I think is a great solution, because all of this is not just off the shelf, but it's full size. Mm-hmm. This is a big radiator.
Yeah, you'd never really want to compromise on the cooling aspects of things. I'd much rather compromise on like overall performance in terms of like how much power can you get out of it than, compromise on cooling. Because when you want to use the car day to day or in traffic, that's when things like that become really problematic.
Yeah. So tell me about these pipes here, the gold and the blue there and there.
So these ones are for the radiator. They're for the main coolant lines, essentially. So we've got them coming from the water pump into the engine block, which sits under the inlet manifold, and then back out of the engine block into the top of the radiator. Yeah. And then those ones will be for the oil cooler. So they come out the back of the block where the oil filter is, using the T7 oil
adapter
filter adapter. Then into that kind of set-trab thermostat. Because you need a thermostat so that the oil actually can get up to temperature without being pushed through the oil cooler all the time. And then, out of them, it'll come down past the engine, underneath the inlet manifold, and into the oil cooler here. And I'm going to have to fabricate some kind of aluminium hard lines to get us behind the front panel. I don't want to trim out too much more of the front panel, and the kind of diameter of the hoses versus diameter of just aluminium tube is quite different. Yeah. So by using some lines, and we can paint it all black so it won't be seen. It'll fit much better like that.
Brilliant. That water pump sits really nicely on the chassis leg.
Almost as if I thought that's right.
Almost as if you planned it.
Well, there was two options really. It could have either gone next to the alternator or in that chassis leg area, but by the time you start getting all the kind of fittings on it, the fittings are all big, it ends up being a huge lump. That's where it's gone. But that's okay, because we've then got that area free for putting that front engine steady on.
Yeah. So the engine bay is cleaning up really nicely, and I know that this is something which people probably underestimate how much time and planning it takes to get everything in a good position, dry fit as it would, before painting the engine bay and all that stuff. and making sure you can access these parts, these ancillaries, because if the car's going to be usable rather than just a static showpiece, you don't want to kind of piss on your own fire, really, do you?
You've got to think about these things well in advance.
Yeah, yeah. This is the other nice finishing, talking of cleaning up the engine bay. This is another T7 part. This is actually a spark plug cap cover here, look, and it just goes over the core packs, cleans it up nicely. This has been painted and a lovely little homage to the A Series A Plus engine logo. This was done by John at JBM Auto Dips, the paint and everything. So that will look really nice on that definitely not Austin, but definitely not Honda engine. But what's exciting for me is the fact that we now have a functioning gearbox. Gearbox was rebuilt the same as the engine by Dream, so both things are going to have to be fully run in before we start going hard. But let's go inside, have a look at the gears. This is exciting.
Into the womb of the Allegro.
Yeah. So I know what we've done for the purposes of this video is we've placed, sort of hand bolted one of the seats back in to show you. Adam's been busy beavering away on these new seat mounts, these tubular seat mounts, which tie into the tubes that are in the sills, which you will have seen in previous episodes, hopefully, for the sort of like roll cage that's not quite a roll cage strengthening system. And then this is the original. Am I right? This is the original.
That's an FN2.
This is an FN2 gear shift kind of mount. And I know you were really keen to make sure we didn't overcomplicate this because you'll lose that beautiful Type R.
Yeah. So we originally had, well, not originally, but the last shifter that we had in the car was an Integra one. And it wasn't until I spoke to a Honda expert friend that said, you can't use that shifter. And it was like, and I realised, we can't use that shifter because it operates the wrong way around.
Oh, does it?
Yes. So that's the faux part. It operates the wrong way around. Right. It's hinged from the top, not from the bottom. So it would have been pushing the cable when we need to pull it to get first gear, basically.
Right.
So with that, we came back to having basically three options: FN2, FD2, or the Accord CL9 shifter. Looking around at what we can get, the Accord shifters don't seem that common in terms of like even just being on eBay. I'm sure you can get them, but sometimes it's best just to go, look, what have we got? Can we make it work? If I look at this again, is there a solution which we can make work? Because we've already got it. It'll bolt in. Yeah. So that's what I did. Drilled some holes through the bulkhead, connected the cables up, put it in and just thought, will this work? So I've made up some temporary brackets.
Yeah.
I think now it's just a case of working out where we might want the gear knob to be, and then seeing if that's going to work and feel right with it being at such an angle, and then can we cover that without it looking silly?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to go for one of the aftermarket shifters because most of my experiences with those are that they're all designed to be a short shifter, and none of them really feel as good as the original Honda shifter does. Simple is best, I think.
Well, the other thing is comparatively compared to the original Allegro, this is short. Yeah, this is really nice and short, and it is a beautiful gear shift. And I'm guessing, again, if you're using OEM here and OEM cables, when it comes to repair or replace down the line, we know it's OEM.
Yeah, so and to be honest, it does feel really good even with those old cables on it.
Oh, it feels great.
Yeah, so that's kind of all the kind of clarification that you need, that just stick with what we've got because it already works pretty well.
But in the name of sleeperdom, this we will have to, and we'll do it, we'll play with it later on today. It'll have the Allegro ball on it, or knob, and this will have to come out vertically. So we're going to try not to change the feel of the shift. So this might just be a case of it being moved vertically an inch or so, rather than being up here or anything like that. And then that will try and disguise this in a version of a center console which sort of pays homage to the original, which I do have one. They are rare, but you might have seen from previous episodes, it won't fit over this.
Nowhere near.
So I think what we'll end up doing is having something scanned and 3D printed, which sits off the trans tunnel, looks the same on the top, and then I can have it flocked in brown, like I said before, which is what's going to happen to the dash. I'm getting really excited.
Good.
Because that gear shift, I know, is just wonderful.
Well, I mean, basically it's all connected now, other than like the actual accelerator cable to the engine.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it won't be a cable, but you know, it's all connected.
Yeah.
Like it's got everything. Obviously you need to connect brakes and stuff, but in terms of engine wise, it's all there. You know, steering column's connected. Yes,
which is great. So, like I said, we'll keep working on the solution for the splines, for the quarter.
Still need to look at that again, basically.
Yeah.
We've got the heater in, obviously.
Which is great, because again, you could just run it like some people would. They just bin the heaters and they don't ever put them back in. But that T7 heater is pretty small and it's quite powerful.
It should be, yeah. I mean, again, it'd be more than enough to warm up the inside of here and demist the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the next things we need to work out as well, is how we're going to plumb it up so that we can get the demisters to work, and then where we have, if we're going to have any kind of outlets in the dashboard at all. I don't think it really needs them, to be honest. I think we'll just leave the outlets to just come out near the bulkhead, and you know, hot air will circulate.
It will. It's a small cabin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it looking clean. And how we disguise that, again, I don't really know yet, but
I mean, that looks old in the nicest possible way. That no one would know what a heater looks like on an Allegro unless they were pretty nerdy. That's okay. It's all the switchgear. Any modern. We were saying before off camera that when it comes to the electrics and the wiring, which is a massive chunk of this project, which we're going to come on to, you want any vulnerable electrics like the ECU and that stuff to be inboard rather than outboard. A, keeps the engine bay clean. B, keeps it dry. And away from extreme temperature change, which is probably where it's going to end up in the glove box area, I would say, where the passengers have got more legroom. There's less going on than here. So yeah, that's really cool.
One thing that I do know is that the heater temperature control is on a manual lever.
Yeah.
Which means we can connect it up to the original Allegro lever for the heat. Yes.
Keeping it analog.
Yeah. So and the fan only has 2 speeds, off, on, and high, and this has 3 speeds. But we can still just wire it up as 2 speeds, so everything Allegro on the dashboard works. Which for me, that's neat. That's the coolest way to do it. I don't want fancy switches and stuff like that. You know?
No, but if we do, be discreet. And that's the key with keeping it as a sleeper.
Yeah. So you just have a high and a low fan speed then, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we'll have a little play with this and see what position, because I don't want a shifter up here anyway. But
no, but it looks silly.
It will look silly.
We can also put the handbrake back in, because obviously that, I mean, it sits up here, but I think it might affect where you might want the gear knob to be.
Of course, you don't want it to foul it, do you?
Well, I think it's quite low. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we can just bolt it in so you can see. Yeah.
This is nice though, have this structure.
Well, the best thing about doing it like this is when you come to your senses and realise that for a track day you will need a bucket seat, we can make it work with the same mounts. Yeah,
Adam thinks I'm bonkers to even consider doing a track day with my brown Alcantara original but reupholstered Allegro seats.
Anyone that's done a track day in original seats with just seat belts knows that you will fall out of them.
It's good for your core though, isn't it?
You're holding on with the steering wheel.
and it'll be a very thin square steering wheel. Yeah. All right, well, we'll cross that bridge. But like you say, if I do put a race seat in, it needs to be easy to do.
Yeah, so again, it will just be these 4 bolts. So,
yeah, okay.
10 minutes work and you've got it swapped.
Yeah, cool. Nice. Very, very nice. So if you've been following the Allegro project for all these years, you'll know that I've gone through various different types of wheels, suspension and brake combinations to get what we want. It's been confusing, but we settled ages ago now on a Volkswagen 5-stud steel wheel, crucially because A, it's a 15 and we wanted a 15 to clear the brakes. The style of the sort of oval cutouts mimic the Allegro slightly. And we will put the dome hubcap back on, and we wanted to be able to fit decent sticky tyres in the case of this, Yokohama, Advan, AO52s. But we're not going to talk about these because we've already talked about these before. We're talking about what goes behind them. So we've got some prototype 3D printed goodness here. Wartech, my friend Paul, hi Paul, at Wartech has been committed to getting the Allegro over the line with some decent stoppers. So what we've got here is is it four-pot? It's four-pot calipers,
Yeah, it's a 4-pot caliper, yeah.
Four-pot calipers, and Adam's run off the 3D printer these prototype bell and disc, or rotor, so that we can check the clearance. So before Paul makes a finished one, we know that it's going to bloody clear and fit behind that wheel, and it's going to clear this, which is Volkswagen, which is why that wheel's Volkswagen setup. It's really cool actually to see this again. I haven't seen the rose jointed suspension and steering for a little while now. So tell me what this is exactly.
So these are 3D prints from the files that Wartech have sent us to check, basically. So we've just got the bell, and I've attached like part of a disc. No need to print the whole. So
you can kind of like do this and check for clearance.
It's more. I mean, the CAD is as accurate as that is, and the printing is if anything going to be slightly less accurate than that. But sometimes it's good just to do like an idiot check of, is it all going to fit on the knuckle? Will the wheel fit over it? And stuff like the bracket behind, which is where you can quite easily kind of maybe get something wrong. So it's always best just to print it off, because that costs almost nothing.
You did that overnight, like?
Yeah. And then you can just bolt it up. Will it work? Looks good. Put the wheel on, and then it's gonna be fine.
And the 3D printing never ceases to amaze me anyway, but this caliper is a real caliper. So it's bolted up to a plastic printed bracket and a bit of disc, like you say, to get the clearance, and this bell which goes onto the hub. So does that currently fit?
Well, the only thing we haven't checked is if the wheel goes over, basically.
Okay.
So that's the only thing left to do.
So let's have a gander, shall we?
You're going to aim in for the 2 studs. Which is in some ways harder than getting it on 5.
It is actually harder, yeah.
Okay. That's it.
I don't like the crunch of 3D printed plastic.
We're really going to check it from behind.
It sounds like we've just...
It's because we're kind of pushing the bell up against the knuckle and hub.
Yeah, pressing the bell against the knuckle, yeah.
There goes some more 3D printed plastic.
It does sound like someone's just thrown a load of like cornflakes behind there, doesn't it? But this is the thing about when you're building, and I've said this 1,000 times with this Allegro project, is when you're building a one-off car, you're kind of experimenting as you go, because this car isn't following a trodden path. And obviously I've changed the engine, we've changed the suspension, the setup of the front, the subframe of the front, if you will, trying to use as many OEM parts as we can for future proofing it.
All looks good.
Does it?
Yep.
Brilliant.
Somebody will point out that the caliper's upside down. I know that. We only had one caliper, so we're filming on this side of the car, so the caliper's upside down. And obviously, I'm not going to fit it like that.
This is just a mock-up stage, okay? So don't shout at us. Don't put it in the comments.
It's super tight, but we knew it would be because, trying to get a caliper of that size, even under a 15-inch wheel, is pretty tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all fits, all looks
good. When you say tight, what tightness are we talking? Are we talking Rizzler paper?
Yeah, I mean, on the transfer pipe, definitely Rizzler paper. But the transfer pipe also has like a sleeve on it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's kind of to stop the transfer pipe vibrating against the caliper. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the only bit that's mega tight.
Is that wound all the way in?
On that union?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Because if you put that down, you might give yourself a bit more time.
Yeah, again, the transfer pipe can be kind of massaged a little bit.
Yeah. So what Adam did is sent a wheel and a knuckle down to Paul at Wartech, and then Paul CAD designed what he thought was the solution, because we want the biggest disc and the best caliper we can to fit behind here discreetly. Then sent the files to Adam. Adam 3D printed them off over there, and that's how we've arrived at this kind of rapid prototyping.
Yeah, we know it works. So
We're nearly there then.
yeah, we can have brakes on it next time, I'm sure.
So the next episode, we will hopefully have like absolutely like done brakes, which would be amazing.
Front and back.
Front and back, which would be a milestone that's been pissing everyone off for years.
It's definitely been part of the challenge with this
Yeah,
car,
yeah.
the brakes.
Yeah. And obviously to that, remember these tyres, we could go down in width on tyres. They are quite balloony to kind of mimic the standard Allegro tyre look. But we aren't going to have a massive, you were saying earlier, we're not going to have a massive amount of steering on this.
Yeah, the challenge with the steering lock is that really, when you turn the wheels in,
Yeah.
you get the front of the wheel touching the chassis leg and the back of the wheel on the other side touching the inner arch. And so there's only so much you can do with the width of wheel you've got. You need some kind of chassis leg to mount the engine on, and then the width of transverse engine and gearbox.
Yeah.
This car originally had the gearbox under the engine. So to keep it within the stock track width, there's got to be a compromise somewhere. And if you want wide tyres, stock track width, a wider engine and gearbox, and some chassis legs, you're going to have limited steering lock.
Yeah.
But
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It'll be a bit of a pig to reverse park, for example, but normal road driving and with a quick steering rack, which is in it, I think it should feel okay. So as long as we don't have some hideous kind of fouling going on.
No, yeah. Again, it's got more or less the same kind of steering lock as you get on most cars, just not the steering lock it would have had originally.
Yeah. Cool though, right? It'll look good with the hubcaps over.
Yeah.
Probably are still going to go with silver wheels because that's what Allegro's had. If you're going to be authentic. Or rust.
We can leave them outside for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another progression session on the Allegro Type R project. I'm really starting to feel like we've made some excellent things. I say we, it's mostly Adam really at Fabco. But what's cool is the engine bay is staying nice and clean. Things are being really well thought through, and this takes time because I ultimately want this car to work and be fun to drive as well as being slightly unhinged. So I'm in it for the long haul, as you will know if you've been watching this all these years. The next time you watch this, you'll probably have a development on the braking system. Hopefully we'll have a complete braking system, as well as some more stuff going on inside here, because this is getting closer to the dry build. Once we finish the dry build, it has to come apart again for all these nice areas to be painted. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd love you to subscribe. And if you want to look at my other project cars, I'll put a link on the screen for that playlist. Cheers.